We're going to talk now to Michael Westwood, who started that petition all those weeks ago for the Labour government to have another election because we're so displeased with what they've done so far. He's the owner of the Wagon and Horses pub. Also, John Lamont, MP, Conservative MP for the Scottish Borders. He said this yesterday about a catalogue of broken promises.
Labour promised not to increase national insurance. Broken. Labour promised not to raise taxes on farmers. Broken. Labour promised not to scrap the winter fuel payment. Broken. Labour promised to compensate waspy women. Broken. Labour promised to protect single-sex spaces. Broken. Labour promised no cliff edge in the North Sea oil and gas sector. Broken. Labour promised to cut energy bills. Broken. Labour promised £150 million war chest for the Scotland office. Broken. Now, wherever anyone stands on any of the individual policy issues, there is no doubt this Labour government has not kept its word. They've broken promises to voters that they made not once, not twice, but hundreds of times.
Broken promises indeed. Failure to compose themselves into what they said they would be, which was a party of grown-ups, a government that was ready, the government that was actually fully costed, a government that was indeed completely and utterly ready to hit the ground running in every single department. That was what they all said. That was what Keir Starmer said before the election. And now look at us. We're completely and utterly bereft, up the creek, as it were, without a paddle. Let's talk to Michael Westwood, who started that petition all those weeks ago. Michael, very good morning to you.
Morning, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. I mean, must have taken you, I'm sure you've been asked this question many times, but it must have taken you by surprise to see the petition reaching 3.1 million. Were you able to watch any of the proceedings yesterday?
Yeah, I was sat in the gallery, listening to everything. Quite entertaining, really. You had a real good turnout on the Labour side, but those there just to scream and shout about the 14 years of Tory government and the 22 billion black hole rather than actually talk about the debate itself.
Right. Yeah, they don't really get it, do they? Because, I mean, I wonder whether you've hit on something here, that if a government does get in on what a lot of people believe to be false pretences, you know, because they did promise all of those things that John Lamont said they haven't done. They also said they were ready to govern. They said they were grown-ups. They were going to bring, you know, proper, you know, grown-up policies back to the running of the country. And it's been a complete shambles, isn't it?
It has, yeah. It's been a complete utter disaster for them, and it seems to continue. Rather than Keir Starmer yesterday addressing the 3 million people that currently live in the country that have signed the petition, he's too worried about Elon Musk and what he's got to say over in America, which I think just about shows where his priorities are at the minute.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I mean, were you satisfied at the end of the day yesterday? I mean, I know you just said that they didn't really talk about the things that you'd want them to talk about, but no, I mean, you've got your little place in history. It's not a bad little thing to have done.
No, it's not bad at all. It was frustrating to sit there and not be able to voice your opinion in the room with them. I thought Conservatives, Lib Dems, Nigel Farage, as part of Reform, I thought they got my argument across extremely well. It was just disappointing to the Labour side that they're not able to sit back and look at themselves and say, yeah, actually, do you know what, you're right, we're going to put this right going forward. Instead, they just wanted to play the blame game, which it felt like sitting in an argument between two sets of children, to be truthful, at the back of the room.
That is the problem, isn't it? When you see them up close, you sort of expect better, really, don't you? But you don't, you don't get it. Well, Michael, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed, and thank you for starting the petition in the first place. Let's talk to John Lamont, who you saw there earlier, just decrying the various promises that were made by the Labour government, which they have failed to bring to the fore. It seems extraordinary, John. A lot of people, very good morning to you, a lot of people say to me now, you know, there should be some mechanism by which if a government or even a politician, a single MP is elected on what turns out to be a completely false premise, there should be some sanction, should there not, whether it's another election or whether it's some kind of recall. But they really have taken the mickey out of the electorate, it seems to me.
Thanks, Mike. I mean, I think the problem that the Labour government have is when any new government comes in, there's a degree of expectation they're going to have a period of goodwill and positivity and really driving forward their election manifesto, the changes that they were proposing at the time of the election. But because there's been this narrative of doom and gloom and all these broken promises, I think the big problem that the Labour Prime Minister have and the Labour government have, a bit like Nick Clegg had back in 2010, people just give up on them and they lose trust. And come the next election, which is the next opportunity that people will have to cast a proper verdict on Keir Starmer and his Labour ministers, is they just won't give them the time of day, because they will have broken that trust, that bond of trust, because of the outcome of this election and how they treated the electorate, all the broken promises and not keeping their words. That they'll find it very, very hard to convince people as to what they're proposing to do next time.
Yeah, because a lot of the barefaced lies, that's what I'm going to call them, that they spoke about before the election, before they were in power, they must have known that they weren't going to do those things. And we kept being told by Rachel Reeves, for example, that everything was fully costed, that everything was going to be done very, very straightforwardly. It would all be very transparent. They talked about how they knew what was going on. They were ready to rock and roll. There was no question of them discovering some gap in the market that they didn't realise was there. And then suddenly all we heard about was this £22 billion black hole, which they knew about.
No, exactly. I mean, I think you're spot on, Mike. I mean, as Rishi Sunak said ahead of the election, we feared that we're going to put up taxes, despite what Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves said, and here we are. They've put up taxes in an eye-watering way. Billions of pounds being taken off employers, a huge tax on jobs. They promised to cut energy bills. They promised to protect WASPy women. They promised to protect family farms, and all those areas, plus many, many more. They have completely U-turned and betrayed the voters, and voters are not stupid. Voters remember. I mean, the Conservative Party was rightly punished in the election. Voters have given up on us. We need to change, and we need to understand what the message was that voters gave to us. But this new Labour government have in many ways fallen into the same trap, and voters will not forgive them.
Yeah, and I mean, should there be some form of mechanism, do you think? I mean, is it possible to introduce something, maybe not in this Parliament, but sometime into the future, so that all politicians are in some way at least punished if they just make stuff up, which never ever happens?
I mean, there is the recall petition, the recall mechanisms now for individual MPs who are caught to break the law or do other things which are deemed to be serious enough to warrant a recall petition. But there is no other mechanism unless Parliament, unless MPs collectively decide to pass a vote of no confidence in the government and bring the government down. There is no mechanism to call an early election. But as I said earlier, we should look back to what happened to Nick Clegg back in 2010 when he broke that big promise on tuition fees, and voters took voters a decade probably to properly forgive the Lib Dems for breaking that significant promise. And I think the challenge for Labour and the Prime Minister is voters are going to take a long time to forgive them for this catalogue of broken promises.
I think that's right. Good to talk to you, John Lamont. Thank you very much indeed, MP for the Scottish Borders, a Conservative, of course.